I knew something was wrong the second the machine went silent. It wasn't supposed to stop. Not like that. Not suddenly. Not without warning. Not in the middle of the afternoon when everything had been working perfectly fine just minutes earlier. The soft, steady hum that had become part of our daily life just disappeared. And when something like that goes quiet, it doesn't feel like silence. It feels like panic. I was already halfway down the hallway before my brain fully caught up to what was happening. My daughter was in her room, sitting up in bed, eyes wide, confused more than scared, but that would change fast if I didn't fix it. "It stopped," she said. I nodded quickly. I know, I replied, moving straight to the equipment, checking connections, power, everything that could explain it. Nothing. The plug was out, not loose, not partially disconnected, removed, completely. That didn't make sense, because nobody touches that setup. Nobody. I looked around the room, then down the hallway, then back at the empty outlet like it might explain itself. "Stay here," I said, keeping my voice steady, even though it wasn't. I stepped outside, and that's when I saw the door. Open, not wide, just enough. The same kind of small, careless gap that tells you someone left without thinking about what they were leaving behind. Or didn't care. I stepped out onto the porch, scanning the yard, and within seconds, I saw her. Walking down the driveway, carrying something. My stomach dropped before my mind even confirmed it, because I already knew what it was. "Hey," I called out. She turned, slightly annoyed, like I had interrupted her. And there it was, in her hands, the machine, the one my daughter needed, the one that should have never left that room. "What are you doing?" I said, already moving toward her. She didn't rush, didn't panic, didn't even look concerned. "I'm removing non-compliant equipment," she said. For a second, I thought I heard her wrong. "You're what?" I asked. She adjusted her grip on it like it was just another item on a checklist. "This wasn't approved under HOA guidelines," she said. "It's been reported as an external violation." "External violation." I stopped a few feet away from her. "That is medical equipment," I said. "It's visible from the outside," she replied, "and it doesn't meet community standards." I stared at her, not because I didn't understand what she was saying, but because I did, and it didn't make sense. "You went into my house," I said. "We accessed the property for enforcement," she corrected. I shook my head slowly. "You unplugged it," I said. "It needed to be removed," she replied. "My daughter needs that," I said. She hesitated, just for a second, but not enough. "Then you should have filed for approval," she said. That was the moment everything shifted. Because this wasn't confusion. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision, a deliberate one. "You need to give that back," I said. She tightened her grip slightly. "I can't do that," she replied. "Can't?" I repeated. "It's already been documented," she said. "This is part of an enforcement action." I took another step forward. "You walked into my house," I said, my voice lower now, controlled but sharp. "You took medical equipment. That's not enforcement." She held her ground. "You're being aggressive," she said. I almost laughed. "You're holding something my child needs to function," I replied. "Give it back." "No," she said. Just like that. Flat, final, no hesitation, no doubt, just no. For a second, everything slowed down. Because now it wasn't about rules. It wasn't about HOA policies. It wasn't about violations. It was about something much simpler. She had taken something that didn't belong to her, from inside my house, and refused to return it. "You need to leave," she added. I nodded once. Not because I agreed, but because I understood. "Okay," I said. That surprised her, because she thought that was the end of it, that I would argue, push, escalate right there. But I didn't. I just stepped back slightly, pulled out my phone and dialed. She watched me, still confident, still certain. "Who are you calling?" she asked. I looked at her and answered simply. "The police." That got a reaction, small, but real. "You don't need to do that," she said quickly. "I do," I replied. "It's an HOA matter," she insisted. "No," I said. "It's not." I didn't say anything else after that. I just gave the address, explained the situation clearly, calmly, exactly what had happened. Unauthorized entry, removal of medical equipment, refusal to return it. No emotion, just facts. When I hung up, she looked at me differently. Not scared, not yet, but uncertain. Because now this wasn't internal. It wasn't something she could control with a clipboard or a policy. It was outside, real, and getting closer. "You're overreacting," she said. I shook my head once. "No," I replied. "You are." We stood there in silence for a few minutes. Then we heard it. Sirens. getting closer. And for the first time since I walked outside, her confidence shifted, just slightly, but enough. Because she still didn't understand one thing. This wasn't about HOA rules anymore. This was about what she took, and what that meant. The sirens didn't take long. Out here, you usually get used to quiet roads and slow responses, but this time it felt different, faster, more direct, like the urgency in the call had carried through. Within minutes, a patrol car turned onto the driveway, tires crunching over gravel, lights still flashing even after it stopped. 2 officers stepped out. They took one look at the situation, at me, at her, and then at what she was holding. That was where their attention stayed. "What's going on here?" one of them asked. I didn't rush. Didn't exaggerate. "She entered my home without permission," I said, "unplugged and removed my daughter's medical equipment and is refusing to return it." The officer's expression changed slightly, not dramatic, just enough to show the weight of what I had said. He turned to her. "Ma'am, is that accurate?" She straightened immediately, stepping into that same confident tone she had been using the whole time. "I'm with the HOA," she said. "This was a compliance issue. The equipment was visible from outside and hadn't been approved." The second officer glanced at the first, then back at her. "That doesn't answer the question," he said. She hesitated, just briefly, then added, "We have authority to enforce community standards." The first officer nodded slowly, then pointed at the machine in her hands. "And you removed that from inside the residence?" She didn't answer right away, which, in situations like this, is an answer. "We accessed the property," she said finally. The officer's tone shifted, not louder, but firmer. "Did you go inside the home?" "Yes, but—" That was enough. He held up a hand slightly, stopping her before she could continue. "Ma'am," he said, "that's not HOA business." Silence, the kind that lands heavy, because now the line had been drawn by someone she couldn't dismiss. "This is a civil enforcement matter," she said quickly, trying to recover. "No," the officer replied. "Entering a home without permission and removing property is not civil. That's criminal." That word changed everything. Criminal. You could see it hit her in real time. The shift in her posture, the way her grip on the machine tightened slightly, like she was suddenly aware of what she was holding and what it represented. "It was documented," she said. "We issued notices." "That doesn't give you the right to enter a residence," the second officer said. She looked between them, searching for something to push back with, something that would bring the situation back under her control. "There are rules," she said. "There are laws," the first officer replied. That ended that argument. I stepped slightly to the side. "My daughter needs that equipment," I said. "Now." The officers didn't hesitate. "Ma'am," one of them said, "set it down." She didn't move, for a second, then another, like she was deciding whether to hold her ground or finally let go. "Set it down," he repeated. This time, slower, clearer. She placed it carefully on the ground. The moment it left her hands, I stepped forward and picked it up immediately, turning back toward the house without another word. I didn't wait for anything else, didn't stay to hear what came next. Getting that machine back inside, plugged in, and working again was the only thing that mattered. By the time I returned a few minutes later, the tone outside had completely changed. She wasn't standing tall anymore. She wasn't directing the conversation. She was answering questions, specific ones. "When did you enter the home? Who authorized that action? Were you aware the equipment was medically necessary?" Each answer she gave seemed to make things worse, not better. "I didn't know it was that serious," she said at one point. The officer nodded slightly. "That doesn't change what you did." She tried again. "I was following HOA procedures." "That doesn't apply inside someone's house," he replied. There it was again, that same realization, building, layer by layer, until there was nowhere left to stand. The second officer stepped closer. "Do you have any documentation authorizing entry into a private residence?" he asked. "No," she admitted. "Any legal right to remove property from inside the home?" "No." Each answer was quieter than the last, because now she understood, not fully, not completely, but enough. The first officer looked at her for a long second, then said something simple. "Turn around." She froze. "What?" she asked. "Turn around," he repeated. And this time, there was no confidence left in her response, no argument, no correction, just hesitation. Because this was the moment everything shifted from possibility to reality. "I didn't mean," she started. "Turn around," he said again. And slowly, she did. The sound of the cuffs clicking into place wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Because once it happened, there was no going back. She stood there, silent now. No longer explaining, no longer correcting, no longer directing anything at all. Just standing, waiting. As the officers finished the process, one of them glanced toward me briefly. "We'll need a statement," he said. I nodded. Of course. But at that moment, something else was more important. Because even now, she still didn't fully understand what she had done. Not the full weight of it, not the actual consequences, not the part that would matter once this moved beyond the driveway and into something official. Because what she took wasn't just property. And once that was made clear, this wasn't going to stay simple. After they put her in the back of the patrol car, everything went quiet again. Not the same kind of quiet as before, not that empty silence after damage is done, but a different kind, the kind that settles in when something serious has just happened and everyone is processing it in real time. The flashing lights reflected off the windows, the engine idling, the officers speaking calmly into their radios as the situation moved from the driveway into the system. I stood there for a moment, then exhaled slowly. Because now that the machine was back inside and running again, the urgency had shifted. What had been immediate was now official. One of the officers approached me with a notepad, his tone steady, professional. He asked me to walk through everything again from the beginning, not rushed, not emotional, just clear and accurate. I told him exactly what happened, from the moment the machine went silent to the moment I saw her walking away with it in her hands. Unauthorized entry, removal of essential equipment, refusal to return it. Every detail mattered now. When I finished, he nodded once and made a few final notes before looking back up at me. "Do you know the value of the equipment?" he asked. I did, and when I said the number out loud, even he paused slightly. Because it wasn't small. Medical equipment like that never is. Specialized, necessary, expensive. And that number changed things. Not emotionally, legally. "All right," he said quietly, writing it down. "That's important." I knew what that meant, because at a certain point, this stops being about a simple theft. It becomes something else, something heavier. Something with consequences that don't disappear with an apology. They stayed for a while after that, finishing up, making calls, confirming details. Eventually, the second vehicle arrived, and she was transferred without much conversation. No more explanations, no more attempts to justify what had happened, just quiet compliance as reality continued to settle in. Before they left, one of the officers turned back to me. "Someone may reach out regarding charges," he said. "Given the circumstances, this likely won't stay at a basic level." I nodded. I understand. And I did, because what she had taken wasn't just valuable, it was essential. And there's a difference. The next few days moved quickly, faster than I expected. The HOA didn't wait long to respond. First came the messages, then the calls, then a formal letter. Carefully worded, cautious, trying to separate the organization from what had happened while still acknowledging that it had happened under their structure. They called it an isolated enforcement error, a misinterpretation of authority, anything that sounded controlled and contained. But the facts didn't match that. And they knew it. A few days later, 2 representatives came out in person, both noticeably more reserved than anyone I had dealt with before. "We want to address the situation," one of them said. I let him speak. They offered a formal apology, full replacement coverage for any related damages, and a written confirmation that no HOA authority extended into private residences under any circumstances. It was thorough, careful, designed to close the situation. But this part wasn't theirs to close. "I'll review it," I said, because at that point, the HOA wasn't the main issue anymore. The legal side had already moved forward, and that's where things changed for her. Because once everything was reviewed, once the value of the equipment and the nature of what happened were fully documented, the charge reflected it. Not just entry, not just removal, but the level of what was taken. And when that number crossed the line, it did. It became something much more serious than she ever expected. That was the part she never saw coming. Because up until that moment, she believed she was enforcing rules, managing compliance, operating within a system she understood. But systems have limits, and she crossed all of them. I didn't see her again after that day. Not at the property, not in the neighborhood, not anywhere. I heard things, of course. People talk, especially when something like that happens. But I didn't follow it. Didn't need to. Because the outcome was already clear the moment the situation moved out of her hands and into something that doesn't bend to assumptions or authority that isn't real. As for the HOA, things changed. Quickly, policies were updated, boundaries were clarified, access rules were tightened. Because nothing forces clarity faster than a situation that proves exactly what happens when those lines are ignored. And as for us, things went back to normal. The machine stayed where it belonged, running, reliable, untouched. Because the difference between something being seen as a violation and something being understood as essential is what happens when someone finally faces the consequences of not knowing the difference. How did you like the story? Please like, share, and subscribe my YouTube channel for more interesting HOA stories.